Just start. Okay, I've started recording. So the objective for this class is I'm giving you the choice of either picking up the exercise from last class. Remember that I gave you a, a full dashboard without any layout options, and I've asked you to emulate one layout that was already made. We can continue with that and do it here, or we can actually, given a data set, try to produce one dashboard so we can emulate the process behind building a dashboard itself. So, but if we are going to do the second option, I was going to ask you if, for example, for this particular data set that has this given question columns, what visualizations would you want to do, for example? So the second option requires more of a more interactive class where you actually try to, oh, okay, maybe I have a similar issue that might arise when building these kind of visualizations. So we can all go through those problems together. So what do you think is better for you? Actually turn chat on just in case. So why can't I see the, oh, well, here it is. So there's also another option, which is to go through other dashboard components that you might want to use. So that's also up to you. Okay, without any feedback, that gets kind of hard, but okay. Also,
I do not have any specific questions right now. We had our meeting yesterday,
yeah.
and now yeah we need to work a bit more to have more doubts. So I don't really have anything now.
Okay, sure. Okay.
I think
Then
it might be useful to see options that we can use and how to apply them, probably, because some things seem very basic and straightforward, but then when you try to do it,
yeah,
you need to know how to do it.
yeah,
Otherwise,
that's
you get
true.
lost. Yeah, so maybe that's something we should see.
Okay, so let's try to build a dashboard from the beginning, more or less, and try to find those issues that might seem simple, but maybe they aren't. Okay, so I sent you an email with some examples from last year. So these are actually the 4 dashboards I sent you, 5 dashboards I sent you. So clearly this one was the less successful. It's kind of, okay, one example of what maybe not to do, because although it has a lot of visualizations, which by themselves are not bad. The thing is, the dashboard as a whole visualization together, it's kind of confusing, right? So we know it's happiness in the world, but there isn't any text, any explanation. So not the best example. The other examples are much more successful. For example, this Paradise Finder. What they actually wanted to do is to show us which city or continent is the best to live in given temperature, rainy days, and sunny hours per day, average wise, actually. So if a user actually arrives to this dashboard, maybe a little more text would be helpful. With some basic interactions, you would pretty much get the point. And it's actually a pretty interesting visualization, right? So choose your preference. Imagine I wanted to go to live in North America. I preferred safety. Healthcare in North America is not that good, so I don't have any healthcare preferences, cheap living, etc. what this would do is actually fit the best candidate, in this case would be the city of Calgary, Canada, to your choice list. So given these parameters that were given to you, he would actually say, oh, this is the best city of our list of cities. Probably they don't have that many for you to go live in. They have the descriptions, so the reasons why you should choose this city. They have here the progression through time of that of the comparison with uh, compared to the previous year, and they also have other pretty cool statistics, right? So this is a visualization that was well graded. Also, European tourism. This one is somewhat simpler in terms of what they've done in the background of the function. So it's actually pretty complicated to given a set of options to retrieve the best city. In terms of programming, that might be a bit more ambitious. Nevertheless, this one is a bit more simple. So you choose countries, and continents. You choose the year, and it will actually print out the tourism information for your choice. So this is one data set that has all of these informations, and the thing they've done is, okay, we are going to filter by country, continent. This is kind of a weird choice, to be honest, and year, and we will output those results to our graphics. So some of the graphics kind of break down a bit, but in terms of a whole visualization, it might have some issues, but the purpose and the point of the visualization is there, and it wasn't bad graded as well. Although yes, this one is kind of buggy, but that's not the point. So what I'm trying to tell you is that, okay, the how you achieve your visualization is important, but the understanding of a user when they arrive to your visualization is very much important as well. So when a user arrives here, okay, happiness in the world, country, but it you don't really understand what's going on. But if you come here, or even here, it gets much more understandable, and especially sometimes a bit of text might help a lot. So keep that in mind as well. The other two were also in terms of actually the Spotify, although it's kind of weird in terms of this green versus the white, but this is actually one of the best graded as well. If you click on a country, it will output the best recording artists of that country. And if you choose a recording artist, it will actually output the most sold songs or most heard songs of that particular artist. Also, they have progression through time. So this is a very good example of they have a simple data set. The queries themselves are not that difficult. So these are simple queries that you can make, even copying the examples that you're given with the countries and the years. But in the end, this is a good visualization because even though it's simple, with a few clicks, you can really understand the point of this dashboard. So you want to see which artist or which song is the best for that country or for that year, and you fairly easily get the point of this dashboard. So yeah. Oh, and this is the example given. So now a question. You want to start from the beginning, okay? Do you want to use the emissions dataset? Okay, let's say yes, so we don't lose a lot of time with the beginning. So the first step with a project itself is, okay, what do we want to do with this? So in this particular case, we have a data set that has the emissions for all countries in all of the years, in a given range of years. So it doesn't matter what range it is in this case. And and also in their particular sector. So it's a very dense data set. It's kind of big, and we have a lot of options that we can choose for a visualization. So in this particular visualization, although it has some deficiencies, true, the objective was to see somewhat the progression of gas emissions throughout time. So in comparing different gas emissions, but it doesn't go into, okay, what's the difference, the core difference between countries, because yes, we have a map, but it doesn't tell a story, right? So what we can actually do is try to, okay, we try to build a dashboard that, given two countries of the users choosing, will compare them in terms of uh, environmental policies. So maybe that's a good choice. Correct me if I'm wrong, so if you prefer a different kind of visualization. Okay, so for this, I'm going to create a new Python notebook. We can actually build in the same directory as last class, so lesson 6. Let's call it dashboard. Let's just call it dashboard. So what we will require in the beginning, as in any, is the imports. So there's a lot of things we can actually use from other examples. And now we just, first we need to understand what our data set, what we want from our data set. So we have country name, we have year, we have some gaseous emissions, actually 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have sector emissions, and we have actually location data. So what we can actually do is compare countries by gaseous types of gaseous emissions or types of sector emissions. So let's say that for this example, we'll stick with the sectors and not the gases in particular. Yeah, let's do that. So the beginning of any dashboard starts with envisioning what you want to do. So how can we do that? So we first need to visualize which boxes and where to put them and which kind of visualizations. So since we have a lot of location data, we should start with a map. So let's say we want a map in this position as well. Oh, let me try to draw something. So okay. So normally with a with a board or a piece of paper, it gets much easier. But let's see. So so imagine this is kind of our dashboard. We will have a title. I won't write title because that won't go very well. Let's say we'll put a map here, some interactive options here. Actually, let's do this differently. So if you have any particular choices, please tell me. So let's put a map here. The map should be big because it carries a lot of information naturally. And let's put here, if you click on a country, it will output some information of that country. So we haven't chosen yet what to showcase, but nevertheless, in terms of interactive components, let's put them here. So let's give this one, if we, so let's say, okay, let's say we can choose the year here, and we can choose something else here. So, or compare them by sector. So, yeah, that seems pretty nice. And below, let's put the comparison between two countries. So, yeah. Okay, so now that we have somewhat of a skeleton here, that was expectable. Let's come here. So we'll want the same data set, so no changes here. We probably will use the countries, drop down and the year slider as well, so we can already copy that. If you have other options, you have here how to build the options, so the input value options for the dropdown. So it needs to
Teacher,
be, yeah, sure.
we are seeing the dashboard of Spotify.
Oh,
At least me.
okay, good. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I can actually share a screen. Yes. Okay, now I'm sharing the. So you're seeing PyCharm now, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, good. So what I was showing you, we have the imports here, and we'll use the same data set. So yes, be careful with the size of your data set. So if you have a very big data set and you're importing it, especially as a download, and you don't have it locally, you might have errors because the pandas read function will time out. This means if it takes too long to download the file, it will simply stop working, stop downloading it, and an error might occur. So if you're getting your data sets from the internet, please be careful with that if they are too heavy. So we're going to use the country options as well.
Sorry, but if it's locally, is there a limit also?
Sorry?
If the file is locally stored, it has a limit also that it can't go further than some size?
It probably has a limit, but you shouldn't worry about that. The limit is more your computer's power to use that data set. So Pandas does not have a limit, I believe. If it has, it is very big. It depends on the computer.
Okay.
Because when he imports the data set, even if it is locally, he needs to store it as RAM, so local memory. And local memory is not as big by far as the overall memory of the computer. Not local memory or cache. So yeah, it depends. You don't have a limit, but if it's too big, your computer won't be able to run it. So yeah, you will feel the limitations. So we'll want a dropdown to choose our countries. Actually, we will want two dropdowns since we are comparing countries. So we can already do this. So let's say drop down country 1, and we'll use the drop down for country 2. We actually need to do the options first so it doesn't print out an error. And let's say given a list of countries, so it needs to be a unique list, right? A unique list of countries, which in our case is inside of df dot the name of the countries are, so the key that has the name of the countries, it's country name. Okay. So, and this is not unique. So you need, if you're using pandas, you need to apply the unique method, which will print the unique countries. And after you have a unique list of options that you want to showcase, you need to create a list of dictionaries. So I'll call this country options now. this will be a list of dictionaries that need to have, each dictionary must have a label and a value. So the label will actually be the label that the user sees. And if the user picks that label, the dropdown will output that particular value. So imagine that you have internal variables that are not that pleasing for the user. So imagine it was Portugal with weird letters or whatever options you might have. You might put on the label a pleasant name, and on the value, the name that you need to run your queries or filters. So for the label, it will be the country, and for the value as well, because we don't have issues with that. And we are doing a loop inside of a list. So for country in our unique country list. So that everyone knows what's really happening here, let's just put it on Jupyter. Nice. So the output, the country options will look like this: a list of dictionaries where each dictionary has a label, which will be what the user sees, and the value, which is, if the user chooses that particular label, will be the outputted value to the callback. This is what the callback will see. So here it is. Okay, moving on. So since both these drop-downs will use the same options, we are good with that. Let's just put different IDs, which is very important. We need to uniquely identify them. So this will be country drop 1, and the second will be a country drop 2. We'll also have a year option. So let's just grab that year slider. So actually, let's grab them from the, so it's more general, from lessons 5 dash core components. So I gave you this, which is basically a lot of core components already programmed. So let's take them from here so it is more general. So here we have the slider. We actually can choose between a slider and a range slider. The difference between them is that the slider can only choose 1 year. The range slider will output 2 years, so a range of years. Yeah, so for this particular case, let's choose, well, let's choose this one for now, but we can change it later as well. So we come here.
Professor,
Yeah.
I
So
think we have
the idea,
the same ID for
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
both
Oh, thank you.
systems.
Yeah. So we don't need that label. We are only building. So the year slider will be, okay, will be range slider. The ID will be unique, so we are okay with that. The labels right now are actually in the same format. So it doesn't have a value, but it's also a list of dictionaries, the marks, sorry, minimum, maximum value. So we know that our years go from 1995, I believe that's 1990, until 2015. So we can already put this here. The initial value needs to be within that range. So let's say the initial value is the whole range. And the step is the space between options. So we want from year to year, so step 1. These marks actually can't be like this. So this is actually what is shown below. Let me just show you. So right now we have this as a mark, but we don't want that. So year 0, year 1, very good, but we don't want that particular range. So let's say that for our Y, we want to go from 2 to 2 years, at least shown. So we want, since the years are range 20, so the difference is 20, we need 10 marks. the year start in 1995 plus y times 2. So here it is. So oh, we can actually go to 11. So this will be showcased there.
What if the steps between each year is different? Meaning, imagine that data was not collected since 1999 to 2009. So if we have this gap in years, how can we deal with it in order to, let's say, validate that the user is not putting that missing dates in the filter?
Yeah. So yeah, that's so. Imagine there's a gap between the years, and you don't want the user to be able to choose that.
Yeah, that's the question.
It's not in the step option. The step I actually don't know, so we can check that out. So so dash range slider. So the range slider is built like this. Oh, okay. So oh, I understand. Okay, so you need some manipulation here. What we were doing back then is, okay, this is a pretty straightforward, because the min and the max is the output for the callback. So the callback will receive numbers between 0 and 10. In our case, between 95 and 15, 1995 and 2015. So if you have to do more, if you want to do a particular gap between a given range, you would simply disregard this. Actually, you can keep this, but the marks themselves would be different. So
Okay.
so it would have to be, it would take some work. So for example, this we had for example, okay, so here we have 20 years, right? A range between 20. So let's say 1995 plus y for y in range 20. So we have this list of possibilities, but imagine that we didn't have data in these five years. What you would have to do actually is, in here you would disregard this, so the min is 1 and the max is 15. It can actually be 0. So you only have 15 possible values to choose from. And here you would, in the marks parameter, you would actually join to each year the marks. So you would end up here. Remember, our options are from 0 to 15. So
I understand. So we need to map each year to a certain index.
yes.
Okay.
So
and it needs to be done kind of manually.
So what we would do here, if
we can add year 11, index 11, and it's 2020. Just append another.
Yeah, you can do it in a much easier way. So we want 15 years, and if e plus 1995 in Range. Oh, okay. This is, I'm doing it in a kind of confusing manner, but the important thing is the output. So 2005. If this, then it's not then. Uh, and
I think it's 2 points.
+5. Else. Now inside of an array, it doesn't have 2 points. So invalid syntax. Okay, let me do this differently. I'm being more confusing than elusive. So for E in range 15, we'll have a options list is an empty. If E is for the first 5 years, we will output. So we will append data normally, so that the user sees it. Year.append If after the first 5 years, so else, we'll output this. So 1, 2. Else. Why is this not? Huh? Okay, we have we were missing some. So manually, it would have been much faster, but the user can choose between 15 different options, and there is no options between. And you would do the same thing for the callback. So the callback would map until 4 to these years, and after 4, it would map to these years. So the user doesn't see years that can't be outputted, and your function doesn't try to do or deal with missing data.
Okay, I think that the drawback is that in the range slider, the years will be, so 1999 will be as close as 2005 as 1998. So in a sort of visual way, they will be at with the same distance,
Yeah,
or not?
Yeah, you could. I think that's also probably manageable. So, for example, if you put marks in different positions, it will actually make the ratio. So the marks only appear from 0 to 100 possibilities. They will only appear visually in the percentage 0, 26%, 37, and 100. The issue with this particular one is that you can still choose options here, which shouldn't be able. But there's actually an option, which I don't remember now what is, that it only allows the user to actually choose the marks. I don't remember that now.
Okay.
It should be here. So these are all of the options that the range slider accepts, and it's probably here. So I'm not going to lose more time with this, but if you'll find it here probably.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So, but moving on. So we kind of need to go faster so that we actually have a dashboard. So we already have our interactive options. Maybe we will add some later. Now we need to start envisioning our app. So it will be an app, a dash app. It will have a given layout. So we can already copy all of those necessary functions that are immutable. So in the end, so you can run the app, you need to have this code as well. And that's basically it for now. So we started our app with a title. So HTML dot age1, which is the highest sized title possible. You can actually manipulate directly the size of the string, but in terms of pre-made components, this is the biggest you can have. So my dashboard title. After that, we will have, remember, a box where the map was on the left and on the right will be a graph, or it was actually a graph. So we need an html.div. We open like this, and inside of the div, it's a list which are its children, or the the other components that will go inside of it. Inside of this div, we'll actually have a dcc.graph, which is the map, which will enclose inside of another div as well. So we have a big box, two smaller boxes inside of it that are horizontally displayed, and inside of those boxes will be a graph, or two graphs actually. So here we'll put html.div. Yes. So we'll have, this one will be the map. Let's already call it map so we don't forget. And the other one will be a, I don't know, let's call it, it will be maybe a bar or a scatter plot. We still don't know. So after that, we wanted a smaller one with our components, remember? And it was actually with the same layout. So it was a smaller bar, also horizontally displayed, where the first one didn't have a graph. Now it will have our ear slider, and the other one, let's have both drop downs stacked, so but vertically stacked. So country drop down 1, and okay, and country drop down 2. And we can, since we already know this, we can already get from our example our style. So here it is. Let's put these places where they need. So here the style will be flex, and here the style will be flex as well. And since we'll probably want the bar to be bigger, flex, okay. Let's put this one with 75% size. Okay. And let's put the other one with the remaining 25%. And for this one, let's keep it as such for now and see how it initially outputs. Okay. So it's a bunch of empty graphs. Since we did not put anything inside of it, it's kind of empty. So we actually need to set its width, its size. So we need to come here, and this one will have, this one needs to be explicitly said, okay, you'll have 50% and you'll have the other 50. So if you don't give them space, they will not stretch. And actually, I remember that we don't want our drop downs to be of multi, because we want to compare two countries, and we only want two countries at the same time, not more. We could actually choose, so for example, compare two agglomerate of groups of countries together, but let's keep it simple for now, comparing two countries. So if we go to the dashboard now, this should be stretched to 50%. This one, yes. So naturally, this drop down should not be 50%, but as you go, you'll see that you'll have to change something. Probably this one is too small. Probably this graph is too small as well, but yet that's not an issue for now. So what
So
you, okay,
one,
yeah.
one question. Would it be possible to put the years label to 50% and the countries label to 15 or 20%? I mean, is it mandatory to reach the 100%?
No, not really. What you can
Okay.
do, actually, you want the year slide to be 50 and this one to be, let's say,
20 or
yeah, 20.
something like that.
So it is good practice to always fill your box, but
Okay.
what you can do is force it to be there with an empty div that has a given size. So,
Okay, okay.
and for example, div, the remaining size is 30%.
Yeah.
This is if you wanted to have this one on the left, but you could actually play with the margins themselves. So there's also the margin. So, and okay, so there's margin left, top, right, etc. So for this particular example, if we didn't want this, but we still wanted the drop downs to be on the far right,
Okay.
you would have to have like a 30% margin on its right. So margin left, sorry, would be 30%. So what he would do is after this ends, he will wait 30% of the big box to start his visualization. So there should be a 30% gap here. Oh, wait. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So okay. After that, after we choose a comparison, we want to display some graphs, like let's say two comparing both countries. So we'll also have exactly the same thing, and let's call this comparison one. Compare, okay, yeah, in comparison, and they will be 50-50. Where? Oh, I forgot a comma. So we can take this off. So now, if we come here, yeah, here it is. So also another thing, always try to comment or describe what you're doing. So one good method to do that is simply putting on top of the graph, instead of maybe manipulating the title directly in Plotly, you might want to put your title here. So for example, imagine you want to put on top of the comparison graphs a title. You would simply, on the same box where the graph is html.h1, h3, let's say h3. So descriptive title 1. So let's try to make this easier to read. And we'll do the same thing for the, let me just, okay. we'll do the same thing for this one here. So now if we come here, we should have two titles here. So yeah, descriptive title 1, descriptive title 2. So clearly this drop down is kind of not very well positioned. So let's switch it with the year slider. So the drop down is in the beginning. It can't have margin left now because there's nothing to its left. It could have, but it would start 30% after. And yeah, let's keep it like this for now.
One question, Professor. When you put the style as display and flex, is it something that is going to the CSS file to find the proper style, or is
No. These are these are CSS styling options. So it doesn't go to the CSS here. Remember, there are actually two ways of changing your styling. One is with this style option. So you put style equal and some given CSS options, or you could actually use the CSS file inside of assets. So, but they are separate ways of doing the same thing. Have advantages and disadvantages when compared, but different things. And this display flex is actually a CSS command which is accepted by every browser.
okay?
Almost every browser. So there, actually, when you're going into, when you're going to find something, so for example, CSS flex. So when you go to, I believe this one, so you're actually trying to find a given CSS option, and you get to Flexbox. It actually says here which browsers support. They're saying the ones that we give you are all supported by all browsers, but there are some CSS options that are very particular to some browsers. So that's actually, you don't need to worry about that because they are probably weird CSS styling options, but that can be something. So,
okay, thank you.
So actually, well, now that I'm looking here, I don't know why, but the year slider actually increased in size, even though we fixed its size. I don't know if you remember from last class, but there's the flex option and there's the width. I don't know if we used the flex or the actual width. Yes. So last class we only used the width, which is much more understandable than flex. So let's change it up. So this is exactly the same thing. I should have used only width because it's less confusing, and I used it last class. So, yeah. So yeah, and it is stronger. The flex sometimes fails. So if you can, please use the more obvious one. So the width. The flex does the same thing, but it is not so useful for this particular case. Okay, but moving on. We already have somewhat of a skeleton, right? We actually could change we can always change a lot of things structurally, but it is something now, right? So for example, let's put this a bit to the middle. Oh, where? Oh, it's here. So that margin left that I just deleted can actually be useful. Let's say 10%. And oh, let's take something, some of the graph and give it to the other one. So at this point, in terms of styling, sometimes it's kind of a change something and see how it looks until you actually have a product that you like. So again, this was too much, but for now, let's keep it as such. So now we need to produce a map with the information, something here and something here. The Plotly, we already have that produced naturally, but for this part, it is better to actually use Jupyter. It might be easier for you to use Jupyter. So you want to create a Plotly figure. So, and you want to create a map. So in here, we actually have the map already created below, which was the choropleth. I'm just going to copy it. So you wanted to create a map, and you after you did it, you got here, right? It's probably a mistake. So your map is of type choropleth. The locations are the country name. This is filtered in the callback since we are not filtering it. That's why it gave out an error. So, but we can actually filter it here. So let's say the year is equal to 2000. And the gas, which is also a callback option, is equal to CO2 emissions. So you were building this with static information. We have a Z, which will be our information, the logarithm of the CO2 emissions. We have location mode, country name of the DF emissions, etc. So we can actually, oh, and we are using num. Let's not use numpy for now. Yes, it's not. We also had other styling options here. So in the text, we were actually already defining, printing out, given the gas name and the year name, that particular title. So we can actually remove that for now. So let's just call it word emissions. We also were using a lot of interactive options. So that's why country something. Let's take this off as well. So, oh, this one is also. Okay, let's take this all together. So after you got here, you would have a map completed. So you were building in Jupyter, which is easier to build Plotly figures than PyCharm, because PyCharm you need to deploy, and here is much more immediate. So import Plotly dot graph objects as go. What? No module name Plotly. Okay, apparently my Plotly disappeared, which is kind of troublesome. Where I might be using this. Okay, I know why it disappeared now. So I was not using my environment, so that's why. So I'm using the base environment. So activate sandbox, which is the name of the environment I use. And now Jupyter Notebook. So it's graph objects. Now we simply go dot figure, remember that, where data equals to our data choropleth, and the layout will be layout color background. Dot show. So you probably are going to produce your your visualizations in Plotly. So it had a log scale because there are countries such as China and the US that have a very high emissions rate compared to the other ones. So it gets the visualization very, very monochromatic, right? So that's why we were using the NumPy log function. So we're applying the logarithm to the data, so it is more comparable. Again, let's use the log here. And here it is. So although it's not the real data, what we can do, since we want to pass the real data, remember there's a custom data parameter which actually accepts the any data without the need to output it somewhere. So you can just use it for the Hoover template. I'm just creating a new intermediate variable that is not logged. And in the custom data, let's put our values, which are the real value emission values without being logged. And here in the Hoover, let's put, instead of Z, let's put the actual real value, which is the custom data. So custom data. Oh, I forgot the comment. So the visualization will be the same in terms of a color, but if you put your mouse on top of the particular country, you will actually get the values. So here it is. Yeah. So this Hoover is kind of, I deleted some things, but emissions, for example, let's put it emissions. And the units are MT for CO2, something like that. Yeah. So now you have color, you have, and you have a good Hoover, so that's good. Remember, these small details in the Plotly visualizations actually count a lot. For example, if I was to visualize this, okay, the mouse is good because we actually get the real values, but the color bar is not good. So there's actually a way to transform those logged values into the real values, but keep in mind that it's also on these details that you might lose points. Okay, but nonetheless, we have one visualization. We've built it. We've actually managed to find a way to change it. So here we are only changing the year. There's no need to change.
Sorry, Professor. You were saying about the scale, that is what is wrong.
These numbers do not represent anything.
Okay.
So
Why are
sorry.
Why are they there?
Because I use the log function to keep the proportions between some countries while reducing the big ones. So there, I've used the log on the data so I could see in terms of color better in the choropleth.
Okay, and what would be the best if we want to use the log function? What would be the best solution to keep the scale?
So you could actually just take the numbers off and try to put other numbers. There are actually options for this. So I actually, one of the groups asked me that as well. So Plotly color, Plotly figure reference. They actually asked me the same question, more of the same question for a heat map, which is kind of equivalent here. This is a heat map with countries. And we actually come to Choroplet, and you go to color bar, to color, and probably here in the color bar options of the Choroplet, there's thickness mode, which determines whether there's thickness. No, X anchor, no, the border, color border, no, tick mode. Okay, there's number of ticks, which, okay, we can do this quickly. So we want, like, let's say we want 3 ticks. We come here. It's not here, it's here in the color bar. We can put a title, so say emission, let's call it emissions, why not? We want number of ticks, and if you come to the documentation, number of ticks needs to be an integer because it's the number of options that will appear there. So let's say we want 3. And this the tick number of list and pair array. So these tick vals is the series of sets text display that the ticks position with tick vals. Okay, so we need tick vals and tick text here. These tick vals will actually define the range where the numbers that you choose will be. So remember, the numbers were between -5 and 10, I believe. Let's put one at -2, one at 4, and the other at 8, let's say. This will be the position where the number you define, where the tick text you use will be. So tick text, I believe. This needs to be of the same range as this. So let's say small, medium, let's say average, and big. So and what you get here is small, average, and big. And these could be the real numbers or whatever. So
okay,
yeah, that actually went pretty well. So
this could be a solution.
yeah, so you could actually put the real numbers here, more or less, right?
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah.
All right, thank you.
So okay, so we have one visualization made. We still need to do something, right? So you need to actually put it inside of the function already. So what we want, the only thing we want to change here, at least for now, is the year, right? Okay. So what we can do, what we need to do is actually put this inside of a function that def make Choroplet, and it only accepts the year. So and this will actually return our figure, not show it, but return it. So and this is already a callbackable function that could be introduced in the callback, right? So it might need some alterations in the inputs here, but already you can already just glue it underneath, and that's what we're going to do now. So you can get it here, and we can already connect it here. So So let's just, okay. Apparently there's an error, but you come here, it's app.callback. So the app actually accepts it's only one output, so or you can just copy this, which is much easier than trying to type it from the beginning and change it yourself, right? So here we will only have one input since the drop downs will not affect our graph. You will actually come from the ear slider as well, and this will output to the graph called map. So here it is. There's an error here. Oh, I need to import NumPy to this node. As np. So, and if I run it now, there should be a map here. Oh, there isn't a map here because my year slider is actually outputting a year that doesn't exist. So what I'm doing here is actually when I make the filter and he's outputting like 1, I'm saying, okay, let's say which countries are here. And since it doesn't have anything, it will not output anything. So actually we need to change this year filter. So and okay, so 1995 to 2014. So this is what we see. So it needs to be between here and here. We could actually have copied the other example that we had. So this will actually have every year here. And if we come here, oh, so this is one of the limitations you might find. So I'm actually outputting 2 values and expecting to accept 1. So, right, so I'm choosing it. I wanted to choose 1 year and see that particular year, but my range slider is built for a range of years. So remember that there was also another component which was slider that for this particular case is actually more suited, right? So since I'm only expecting 1 year. So, and since they have very similar inputs, we can simply copy them. So the initial value will be 2000 and let's say 2000. Step will be 1 as well. The minimum and the maximum will be this. And there's an error here. So this will be the year slider. Let's call it range only slider. So and why? Oh. And this will be like such. So don't forget to change the the ID here. And now we should all be set to go. So this if you come here, you actually are filtering by year. The initial year is 2000. So this should actually be working. So this is a good limitation that might appear. So what you do when this happens is, okay, maybe there's an error with the callback. So in the callback itself, let's print what our function is receiving. So the year. if I come here, after it tries to reload the page, it's still thinking. Let's just reload it. It should print the year. And it is not printing the year because slider year slider input output map figure. So what we have here is that the function is not triggering. And that is happening because 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 we are running this is a funny method. So we are actually running the app before we actually define the callback, so he wasn't seeing the callback, right? So you run the app on the last, it's the last thing you do, which is to run the app. So here it is. And now if you change this, it will actually change this as well. So we have our country options. Let's say we've wanted, and we're kind of going to emulate a bit this Spotify one. Imagine that if we clicked on the map, it would change something or choose that particular country. So there's actually one option in the Choroplet, which is the on-click option. So to make it simpler, let's, so Plotly dash Plotly Choroplet on-click event. So since they are doing the same in this code, the Spotify, we could, oh, Choroplet. We could have actually gone to their code and simply copied their code. So that would have been much easier. So this is not in the same language as we are, so no good there. Let's say Python. How to register, okay. So, and when in doubt, you're probably going to find someone that had this issue. So this guy actually asked the question, but no one answered it. So since we don't have a lot of time to search this, let's simply go to their code, which is also available to you, and simply get the click event, right? So the click event should be in the definitions because it's where they define their app. Let's try to find their Choroplet. Oh, here it is. So that was quick. So they define a Choroplet here, and one of the options that they have is actually the click event. So def title A. So it should be around here somewhere. So, and one of the issues of using other people's code, other people's code, is that sometimes, yeah, you get kind of confusing code. So let's just try to find it. Okay, I had for it. So dash click in map output to callback. So this is a pretty legitimate question. This is the Plotly documentation. There's a guy facing some issues that where he wants to update a graph depending on a point click on the Mac, which is exactly what we want. If we come here, he has a map box, a scatter map box, and here in the layout, he doesn't have anything yet. So let's say what people tell him. So So sometimes when you don't know something, it might take a bit to actually find it. So data, text, markers. And this guy doesn't have it as well. So yeah. So, oh, here it is. Okay. So I actually was kind of, I didn't remember the number of the functions. So, so if you want to actually, when you click on the map for it to output information, so to open up that possibility, you can actually use this click mode option, set it to event plus select or whatever, and it will open up the ID of that color. Will open up that choropleth as a possible input. So we can explore that now here. So this choropleth is here. Let's set it. It was in the layout, right? Let's set it here. So it's another layout option as any other. And let's simply create a new callback because we've wanted to create one that will take as input the map, and it will output to, let's create an empty label right in the beginning so we can see what's being output. So we can just, we will want to put it inside of the bar, right? So bar. And for our function, let's say bar, because it will update our bar, and it will receive the click event. Let's say value. I don't know if this is a value, but we'll see. So information. So, and let's print this information so we can see how it prints. So it doesn't return anything. If I come here now to our dashboard, you'll have an error particular that was used map. So it's not a value, and the output is null, so it will print out a mistake naturally. But that's not a problem for us because we're actually trying to understand what's inside of it, right? So when we click on the map, we can actually select a country now because the click event or click mode is actually active. So if we click here, it doesn't print out the information because we have this toggled to the wrong option. So if we come here, it's called click data and not value. So remember, we actually went from here, we actually got the click mode from the Stack Overflow and the other information for the callback itself in a Plotly forum. So sometimes you need to search a bit to find what you need. It was called click data. just to be sure. Yeah, exactly. So now when you actually click on the map, it should print the chosen information, right? So I've clicked on a country and it actually outputs information about that country. So we chose the country Chad. And since we only want that information, let's try to access it. So it's a dictionary that has inside of it an array. So since it's an we'll access point, there's an array inside of it where we want the last entry of that array. So -1, and that's, oh no, this is actually an array with only one value, which is another dictionary, and inside of it there's another document or dictionary which has the text option. So if we come here, you actually need to be careful, because when you initiate the visualization, the selected country is not, there's no selected countries. So this information will be that none that was appearing here. And since it's a none, when you try to access something inside that doesn't exist, it will print out an error. So there's actually a function called, a method in Python called try, that if this prints out an error, so in the exception that this, whatever we are trying to do inside of try prints out an error or gives an error, then he will do something else. So you won't actually get an error, but you'll get a second chance if something prints out an error to try to solve the situation. So what we want here is, okay, if there's no country selected, so when we try to access that point, it prints out null and it prints out a mistake, then our bar will just choose some random country or choose every country, I don't know, but we are prepared that if something goes wrong with the choosing or the selection of a country, then the bar will not be empty. So the bar graph will not be empty and something will appear. I don't know. It's, for now, let's just put the string here, because we don't know what's going to happen now, but let's see if we are actually grabbing that information that we need. So, and before we do that, let's just equirectangular so it actually is easier for me to select a country without it being a globe. This will still be null because the output of our callback is nothing. And when you try to feed nothing into our component, it will print out null. But nevertheless, if I select the country, it should actually print out. Oh, I chose the the projection wrong, right? Oh, it has a space. So if I choose a country, it should print out something. So I'm trying to choose Russia. This is already okay. So this is that debugging mode that might happen if you had any issues. So is printing out the information. And apparently when I try to access that particular information, it is printing out a mistake, but since it's inside of a try, it will do this A, which is nothing basically. And since we don't want that error to appear, let's pass it an empty figure so this n is null stops bothering us, right? So if you come here, after you reload your app, this is an empty figure always. And if we click here, we actually are receiving the point. So the first print is happening, but apparently I've done something wrong here and I'm not being able to access it. The first thing I see is that this is point and I'm writing point. And that's probably the mistake I had, right? So now if I click on a country, I should receive the full point and the country's name. Let's see. So yeah, here it is. So now I'm actually able to get the name of the country that I clicked. And if I can get the name of the country, I can use that name to build another visualization, right? So I would use it to filter my data set or my data set and use that filter data set to build a bar plot or whatever.
Can you apply it not only for the figures but to the drop down, because you have two ways to choose the country?
Okay, yeah, okay. Imagine that this would also change the drop down. So it will be a multiple output because let's just keep it simple. So it could be a multiple output to go. Yeah, let's use a multiple output because if you're going to do this, it will be a multiple output. So you will output to your bar and actually change the drop down at the same time. So out the drop down is, let's just put to drop down 1. And this will be a value, I believe. No, it will be, yeah, the value, because the value option of the drop down is actually the currently chosen option. So if you set the value to Portugal, it will be the initial value, but this value is changed as you change it inside of your dashboard. So you actually want to point to that particular property. Okay. So, and it needs to have 2 outputs. And let's set the output of the second one to this one. So let's call it country. So we are actually registering the country name, and we're actually sending it to the dropdown now. So we still need to do something else, because if there's an error, which always happens when you start your visualization because you have nothing selected, then let's set the country as Portugal, which is the initial value of that output. So when you either when you start the visualization or you click something that is not correct and this prints out an error, you'll actually set your country option in the drop-down to Portugal. It could be anything else, right? So let's see if this is enough. Okay, so this country here should change if I click in Russia, or yeah. So is there a Russia? There is a Russia. If I click here, so actually something is not going right here, right? And he's actually giving out the country, and this actually accepts a string. So what we can do here is actually again try to see what our friends did. So the output is to a bar chart. Song. Okay, they gave them. Oh, here it is. So no. Okay, their code is. I had forgotten about. So what maybe needs to happen here is either it accepts a dictionary with a label and a value and not a single string, or something else. Let's try to do that before. So instead of just printing the country, remember that each option is a dictionary of label equal to and a value equal to country as well. Let's see if this is what the dropdown asks. So actually we ended up doing callback debugging, which is kind of the thing I thought you might need the most. So it's okay. Okay. So actually the first, I don't know why it started with Brazil. So oh, I didn't start with Brazil. Okay. So value provided this one. So it is not invalid and passed. So it is not this one as well. I actually haven't yet found how it's done here. So they changed the dropdown as well, right? So the way they do it, I'll start now. Oh, here it is. So, oh, it's the options one, right? Song options, country value. Okay, I believe this is probably. Okay, I know. So actually, we're not going to put this in value. We're going to put this in options. And if you come here and click on the country, oh, it's not this as well. Oh, it needs to be a list. I'm actually having some issues here trying to make this one in particular work. So it's kind of a good question for you. So let's try to find it online. So dash drop down output to drop down. So updating a drop down content time. Let's say drop down value because we want the current value. So this pretty much seems to be what we're looking for. So this guy is having issues. This is not it. So apparently you need to come here, options. This does not have a callback. Oh, here it is. So this guy is actually outputting the options that he wants, but what we want is to output the value. So, and apparently the guy is actually doing the same thing as we are, but he's being much more successful than we. So if we come here, we are going to now try to print the country always before and try to understand what's going on. So Portugal. Okay, since the class is kind of coming to the net, do you have any other questions while we try to solve this?
No, not for now.
So this is a good thing because this is probably already working. Let's try to find a country which has a no. So the outputted country here is being Russia, for example. And if we go to our country list, there should be a Russia, but let's see. So some Romania. So I'm actually not quite sure why this isn't working. So country 1 is not a multi. So apparently this should be working, but I'm not sure why this isn't working. So let's just try to find some other answer. So DCC drop down, dashboard part. How to take the input of a drop down, pass dash dot drop selection to variable. No. Updating a drop-downs menu content dynamically. So we apparently we know how to update the content of a menu, but we want to update the value. So we do not want to update the options themselves, but we want to update the currently selected value, which apparently is not working very well for us. But nevertheless, we can actually, so the options, where the options are the same as the labels are the same as the values. So we are actually outputting something that really matches the available options. Now here it is. So, and if we come here, he has an ID. The options are on a list of options, and the output he's outputting to the options themselves. But we do not want to output to the options, but we want to output to the value of those options. And apparently, let's just see if someone is also to the is also giving it to the options value. This guy is also okay. Here is an example of someone that's actually outputting to the value itself as we are. So we want to change the value here. 1 according to the data. And we actually set cities available options. So given the available options, which is pretty much what we have, he is printing out the value. So honestly, I do not know why this isn't working. So okay, so let's move on this one because I'm actually not sure this should be working. This should be a very weird mistake from me. So first of all, let's try to clean up this. We don't want the selection, we only want the single click. So we only want the event to happen. After this, we actually want to just print the information to see if it changed. So here it is. if we print this immediate information immediately, it will be set to none. If the country, for example, is Russia, which exists, so if there's an error or the initial value is set to Russia, then let's try something. So what we want here here, okay. So what's actually happening here is that he's not fixing it, but he started with Russia, right? So there is no initial value, but nevertheless, he actually printed out to Russia. So if the country is always set to Russia, then this should be happening. So because our initial callback is actually working. So if you've noticed, there is no initial value for this dropdown. So the initial value is being given by our callback. So this country equal to Russia is actually what's being given to him. The only issue here is that when we try to reproduce that by clicking on the map, he actually is not able to do it. So let's just take this print off and let's see while clicking what the dropdown is actually receiving. So this is a very particular problem right now, but when you're dealing with callbacks and something is not working, you should always try to put prints on what is being received inside of the function in the callback and what's being outputted. So here there's Russia, right? So apparently when I come here, it should be Russia. So if I come here to Portugal, it does not work. Nevertheless, let's see. Okay, Portugal and none. So apparently our mindset is working well, but there's something here that is not working, right? So there shouldn't be a none. If I click again somewhere else in Russia, okay, it prints out Russia for a moment, but immediately after it prints out none. And this obviously shouldn't be happening.
Is it because in country we are assigning print? Shouldn't we take out the print after country? Where country equals to print information. No. If we take out the print.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's probably exactly the problem. Oh. So when you print something, the output of a print is always none in terms of programming. It prints the information, but the output, if you try to save that, is none. So, okay. Sometimes you also make this kind of mistakes. We actually had this solved for a while now, but I had that print forgotten in the middle of the code, which didn't make any sense. Yeah, kind of a weird way to end this one. So we have 5 minutes left. Do you have any questions? So
No, not at this moment. No.
Okay, so regarding the project themselves, how you how are you all doing with the project? So I've already talked with 2 groups. Obviously, you don't need to talk with me in terms of that project assistance time, naturally, but are the projects going well? So you have until the 15th of June, so there's still a lot of some time left.
Yes, the problem is just that now we have other deliveries and the exams will start. So a lot of stuff to do, but it's typical for the end of the semester.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Professor, just one question. Can you show the code so that we can, in the same row, present 2 graphs
Oh, okay.
in order to arrange the graphs in the,
This one?
how could we, yes. It's just putting the style display as flex and then the width, do we need any other?
No.
Okay.
So, yeah, the width is important because you never know sometimes the size of what's inside of your containers. So you should always try to have a width, a sum of sizes up to 100%. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but only those 2 things are required. And in terms of styling, at least structurally wise, that's basically the only thing you need. After that, it's colors, fonts, and for example, making those boxes prettier, but or background color. There are some options, but you can easily. There are some options that are in the style, but you can easily find them as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Check if it works.
So, does anyone else have any other question regarding this or the project?
I have also another question, but I think it's related with the CSS. So that boxes with the shadow is styled in CSS, right? It's not in HTML, for example. Not this one, but I remember, for example, the group from Spotify, I guess, or this one, yeah.
So this box here, we actually can put it here. Yes, it's a CSS option, so it's inside of the assets folder, which is in the same directory of your app. So it's here. And in one of these, we have this box class that we've created, just that box shadow, margin, etc. And what you do is you actually associate this class to a given object. If you go to our dashboard, which is also in the same directory as the other app, and imagine you wanted to give it to the box that's enclosing your map, you could actually just come here. We are associating it with this box and just class name. Class name. It's class name. Oh, but equals to box class name. Oh, class.
I think it's class name, yeah.
There's something not right with this one. Class name. What? Oh, I know why. So this was. So I'm putting it in the wrong place, right? What's inside of the array are the elements or the contents of that box, and not the properties of that box. So it's here. So if I want to just associate that box or div with a class, which is defined here, the styling options, and if we come here now, this box here should be with those styling options. So yeah. So here it is.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. So if that's the case, oh, there's one. Okay, so we are on time now, right? So I was kind of expecting to have more questions this class, but nevertheless, we still managed to, although not get far, but we got stuck in a very good place to get stuck, which is the callbacks, which normally is the place where most people get those weird mistakes that, like me, took a while to solve. So in terms of when you don't know, there are places to find your answers, but also the prints and that debugging part. And yeah, be sure, can you please upload the class? Yes, I can. But okay, yeah, but nevertheless, with prints and sometimes with getting a second opinion, you will get there. So, and for sure, the callbacks are the most prone to mistakes place, because CSS either it sticks or it doesn't. And in terms of plotly figures, there's only a limited amount of figures that you have. You already have a lot of examples. So, and the other important thing is that be sure that your dashboard makes sense. So it's not enough to simply glue cool visualizations here. The dashboard as a whole and as a storytelling process needs to make sense. So, and cool dashboards that do not make sense will not get that good grades compared to maybe simpler dashboards that actually tell a story. So that's why we've started the class with these examples. So even though this guy has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 visualizations, they have all of the callbacks, and they even managed to put flags on a graph object, which is not that easy. The dashboard is weird, right? So maybe if they didn't spend so much time just putting visualizations and caring more about how to build structurally a dashboard, the grade would be much different. So compared to these guys, that this is a very good work, but compared to these guys that actually have a simpler, in terms of density of visualizations, dashboard, this is much more well designed, right? So this is a simple scatter, this is a simple choropleth, bars. This is the radar one, which is kind of cool. But nonetheless, be sure to make a dashboard for people that do not need an explanation to understand what you're doing. So the dashboard by itself should be pretty self-explanatory. Okay, and if you don't have, the class is over, right? So do you have any other question or something like that?
No. Thank you, Professor. Have a good day.
Okay, well, thank you
Bye.
very much.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend and see you. Oh, and you're having an exam on the 26th, right?
Yeah,
Right.
on Tuesday.
So, yeah, the
The
exam.
theoretical
Yes,
test.
the exam will have. So be ready to have your camera turned on during the exam. So.
Yes.
Oh, Professor Pedro already told you. Okay.
We received an email from Professor Roberto
Oh,
with the
okay.
measures that were being adopted by the university, and it was referring that we should have our cameras turned on. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So see you probably on the 26th. maybe I'll help out. So
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
bye.
Thank you.
Yes, but